Is the Tallahassee arc any good? This is the question I've been asking myself over the last several weeks in anticipation, or should I say dread, over this video. I've talked about this before, but at this point, it's been years since I've seen those late season episodes, and I'm really just going off of memories and feelings I've held on to from those memories, if that makes sense. What I can say is that this season desperately needed to go somewhere and go somewhere fast. We're 14 episodes in, and most plot-driving elements of the season so far are mostly just conceptual things like Andy is the manager.
Fart.
Or Pam is gone. Now that's not to diminish the work that went into trying to humanize one of those tube man things, and the creators went out of their way to set up several plot threads for the future.
Nurse, you know that baby in there, baby Philip? Cancel the circumcision.
I just might be his father.
We're gonna circumcise him.
All good. But we have been wandering in a desert of one-off stories that have not been compelling enough to carry the season forward the way that the same tactics might have worked in Season 2 and Season 3.
How about the Phyllis-Angela dispute?
You already did me.
That's what she said.
Zombie, 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 hey, hey, hey.
So in my current state of mind, an actual arc, a major one at that, is very much needed and very welcomed. And Special Project kicks that arc off today. Hey everybody, I'm Chris and I'm reviewing every episode of The Office ever. And today, we're talking about Special Project. So let's go.
Yes! 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 Yes!
I understand nothing.
So the maternity leave is officially over and Pam is ready to face the music after 8 straight weeks off. Which in my current company, taking parental leave when you have a kid is like 16 weeks now.
Long, luxurious Parisian maternity leave.
It's like so much time that they give you an entire year to take all of that time off. Some people end up taking just a couple months off and then taking Mondays off for the next year. Super cool. I had like 2 days off when my kid was born and those days weren't paid. Either way, I'm glad that the culture is changing and hopefully it's changing for you. But not only is Pam back, but Angela's back too, and this cold opening gets uncomfortably brutal, even perhaps seeds a little tension between Jim and Pam.
Oh my gosh, it's really good. I wouldn't know. I'm watching my weight. Oh.
You know what's an even more useful treat is cash. So,
Nope.
Pam's had a rough go at it as a character for a bit, with the writers leaning into some jokes derived from some very real places of insecurity and inadequacy.
Do you think anyone's gonna notice I've worn this costume before when I wasn't pregnant? You know, I guess nobody would believe it still fits.
Which is a perfectly fine thing for the series to explore, but it also shifts Pam from the straight man character to someone with antics to parade about, to leaving Jim to play the straight man against his counterpart.
2 question marks is kind of aggressive. You know, it's like, well, what? Just do one.
It's kind of weird, but there's plenty of good Jim face in this episode. Either way, Angela's back and looking as though she never left, and that's because she was actually not pregnant during this season, and that's why she kept her American doll figure. Interestingly, Kinsey's real pregnancy was hidden way back in Season 4. But in Special Project, we learn that Dwight is going to carry forward this concept that Angela's kid is his kid.
What are you doing here? You just had our baby. Our collective Dunder Mifflin family baby.
Now, this episode is circling back from this moment a few weeks ago.
When something comes along that is right for you, I'll try you out.
We get to see what the CEO has dreamt up for Dwight, and in his wisdom, he's decided to put Dwight in charge of this.
Assembling a team to go to Tallahassee for 3 weeks to develop and launch a chain of Sabre stores.
Now, anytime the series has explored giving Dwight power, it makes for an interesting concept.
Watch this. You're pre-fired. And when I'm promoted, you'll be full fired.
And this episode goes on to explore strategies and decision-making behind group dynamics, but the idea to put Dwight in charge is always a fascinating one, especially in this case, because Jim exists and was also the previous manager of Dunder Mifflin Scranton.
Sign it.
No, not without a please. Idiot.
And also, Robert seems to be expecting Jimothy
Jimothy.
to be a part of this project too, so I don't know. But we're going to get into that later. Perhaps Robert values Dwight's unique, out-of-the-box people skills, and further, and maybe more deviously, Robert thinks that this extremely public and relatively stupid special project might be trivial enough to see what the beet farmer can do with it. As in, if he succeeds here, then it's win-win for the company. But if he fails, you know.
I'm going to tank the Saber store at the presentation to the board.
And if my memory serves me correctly, we'll be dealing with that in a couple episodes. Meanwhile, Daryl has a special project of his own in progress, which special project being the unofficial Valentine's Day episode of Season 8, Val gifted Daryl a hand-knitted beanie. And Daryl, thinking that this was a romantic gesture, goes all in for the kill by giving her what he calls a distinctly romantic gift in return. But then he realizes that she made all the warehouse guys the same gift. Although, is it interesting to point out that all of their hats have a similar dull, earthy tone, whereas his has a very rich purplish red hue? Not sure what to call that color.
Is there a pinkish hue?
There's a hue.
Daryl, sparing the embarrassment, pivots and gives the village idiot the gift, and he wins over Nate for life with the gesture.
Oh, Daryl. I am glad to be in your life too.
So we have a lot to unpack here because I feel like there's a little bit of a Mandela effect thing going on. You can go Google that if you don't know what that means. When Daryl set up that he was giving Val a distinctly romantic gift, I really remember this being lingerie. Like, I even asked my wife, who was not in the room with me when I watched this episode, hey, what was the gift that Daryl gave Val that was distinctly romantic? And she said, yeah, it was lingerie, right? It's not. It's gloves. Specifically expensive pair of cashmere gloves, which, Mandela thing aside, are gloves a distinctly romantic gift? I asked my wife and she said, I mean, I wouldn't expect you to give me them, but it would be weird if a straight guy friend just gave me a pair of expensive formal wear gloves as a Valentine's Day gift.
Your card is more beautiful than the gloves.
And then I asked her if she wanted me to buy her cashmere gloves for the next Valentine's Day. And the rest of that conversation is none of your business, really. I mean, I gotta keep some things sacred.
Of course it's casual.
Either way, I got serendipity vibes from this whole thing, since cashmere gloves is like the hands of fate in that film, which, keep that concept in mind. I think that's actually going to be important for the deeper meaning. Back upstairs, Dwight's fleshing out who he wants on his team, and we get a rare meta joke.
We don't need idiots. Or, what's your name?
Kathy.
Kathy.
And I actually love this joke. I think it's well timed and pretty well written, but I do think it plays on the rules of the universe that have been established over the last several years, because we are to conclude that the showrunners of the PBS documentary edited this together to comedic effect.
What's your name?
Kathy.
Kathy.
Now, I don't care because I laughed and all, but it is an example of how the comedy is evolving. Moving on, though, the A-plot follows Dwight's quest to build the best team possible. But Andy steps in because he needs to keep essential staff in the office to keep it running as efficiently as possible. Meanwhile, Jim and Pam are deliberating on the text responses back to Robert, California, to keep the door open for career growth as best as possible.
Oh no, maybe just put 1. 2's aggressive. Like, what? It's aggressive.
What's it like?
What? You shouldn't.
Okay.
Thanks for making me do that again.
A theme arises.
Kathy, Kelly, and Kevin.
Oh, God.
I'm supposed to get on an airplane with those nincompoops? We'd never make it off the runway.
Father of a newborn really should be helping out his wife any chance he gets.
Good. Doesn't sound pushy. You're just stating a fact.
I'm gonna up the ante. Give her a clearly romantic gift.
Andy takes command and lets Dwight know that he can't take all of the key personnel, and Toby. And the duo begin to interview the staff who's interested in going on the special project, and we get some great bits here.
Youth knowledge. That's what you get when you put Ryan Howard on your special project team. Or Kelly Kapoor. Again, not both. Thanks.
Florida Stanley smiles. Florida Stanley is happy to go to work. Florida Stanley is who you want on your Florida team.
Florida Stanley, or Uncle Stan. What could have been, right? Or I guess like could be? It's probably not happening, but if you don't know what I'm talking about, go check out 10K Productions' video on the LDB controversy over the last couple of years. It's worth it. Either way, we should all be very excited to see Florida Stanley. Back down to the B plot, Daryl takes a call directed towards his love interest and realizes she has a love interest herself. But later, she dodges telling Daryl about that relationship, which makes him conclude,
This is a love beanie.
And rounding out the A plot, Dwight meets with his new team and attempts to convince each of them to call it quits in a very Michael Scott-inspired conference room sequence, complete with pictures on the wall, mosquitoes in the air, and threats of, like, whatever you would call this.
He brushes your soft, supple cheeks with his worn, leathery hands and says, I'm gonna make you the 7th Mrs. Rosenblatt.
Each participant wants to go on the trip for completely different reasons, it seems. Jim and Pam feel that it would be best for Jim's career, something that they shouldn't really care about since he turned down the manager position, but
I'm just happy the way things are.
Gotta let that one go. Ryan's all over something with the title of Special Project, Stanley's all over Florida, Kathy's all over Jim, and Aaron's trying to get all over Andy. The episode concludes with an interesting sequence in which the team starts to click and brainstorm under Dwight's leadership, which I've always found to be really wholesome and fun.
And they should have a place where people can check their computers or printers before they see you, so you don't have to carry it around like a dope.
Oh, I like it.
Dwight, is now a good time to go over what you expect of us?
But it's also where we should dive into the deeper meaning.
We'll get to the meaning of the beanie.
What does a bean mean?
Someone please explain it to Cap.
Man's quest to find meaning in the world and in our lives is intrinsic to our being.
What does a bean mean?
And on top of that, we're either pre-programmed or through a series of evolutionary advantages biologically wired to identify patterns. Pattern recognition delights and triggers our little pleasure bells in our brain because for our species, identifying patterns and then being able to capitalize on them is what's kept us alive. It's what's allowed us to innovate in every single area of life, whether it's agriculture, the arts, or astronomy. Even without advanced technology, we figured out so much stuff because we're able to recognize patterns in our reality. Fire, tools, democracy, catapults, dentures, computers. It's really all pretty incredible when you stop to think about it. But we're still here in the current year that I don't like the name. But we are still here. And with all of our modern technology, we're still looking for patterns, which is great if you're a scientist or an engineer or something, and maybe less so if you're a conspiracy theorist. Like, pattern recognition led the ancients to conclude a heliocentric, spherical Earth cosmology, which is incredible and amazing. But that same desire to find patterns leads people nowadays on their computers to listen to memes about flat Earth. One thing's for sure, though, we are pattern seekers because the human experience is one without certainty. Uncertainty breeds insecurity and causes us to cling to any scraps of power and control that we can identify as life rafts in the endless sea of nothingness. We spend our days with ambition, planning, and organizing, though we don't know how anything is going to work out at all, which is exactly why pattern recognition is so important to us. And it's also what we're playing with in the Special Project episode. Everyone's got a project going on. Everyone. Dwight's trying to put together what he would consider his perfect team. He meticulously analyzes his needs and then begins to identify those who can fill those gaps. Because he thinks that if he can just reason hard enough and make all the right moves, everything's going to begin to come up Dwight.
Perfektenschlag.
Andy's project is to keep the office moving because removing key people from the office will harm their future outcomes. Jim and Pam are awkwardly trying to get out of going on this trip. Aaron's working on getting away from the one who got away. And Daryl's working on getting with a subordinate.
Your mom's name is Brandon?
Yeah, Daryl. My mom's name is Brandon.
But in this episode, no one's project goes exactly as planned. Jim ends up getting coerced into this Florida trip, but he gets a chance to mess with Dwight in the process.
Jim is essential.
Hold on, just want to get it on camera.
Andy, Jim is just too
essential.
Cut!
Andy's got to make some concessions here and there.
Daryl and Phyllis, you can have but you're also taking Kathy, Kelly, and Kevin.
Daryl realizes that there's still some wiggle room for him to get with his employee, and Dwight finds that even though he didn't get the group he wanted, the team he got is willing to persevere and demonstrates quickly how seriously they'll not only take the project, but their submission to Dwight's leadership in the process. I called this moment wholesome earlier because while our obsessive and insistent need to be in control of our destiny drives us to plan meticulously and follow the patterns that have worked in the past, all of us know deep down we don't have control of much beyond ourselves, which is a concept that gave rise to a whole different human trait of F it, let's just make the best of what we got.
That's not a bad team. Perfektenschlag.
And with that, let's rate this thing.
It might be innate goodness versus innate badness.
This is the worst.
Can anybody explain to me what the arrangement between Ryan and Kelly have here?
Two young, dynamic people in this office who know trends, who know youth. That's myself and Kelly Kapoor. You need one of us there.
Or both?
Not both. Just one.
I haven't talked about them in quite a while. If I remember correctly, some stuff's coming up that we're going to end up sorting through.
I do adore you.
But, maybe leave it in the comments. Their situation is kind of nebulous.
Who knows? It's nebulous.
Ratings, right? Cold opening. This isn't exactly a cold opening as we've come to expect. This is just a scene bringing us into the beginning of the story, which isn't the worst thing in the world. In one sense, it is a return to some of the basic Office cringe.
So you guys, you know what's an even more useful treat is cash. So
Nope.
we wanted to say thank you.
Okay.
I don't hate it, but it's not good. I'm going to give it a 1 out of 5.
I'm gonna fight through it.
As for the special project itself, this ain't bad, guys.
Guys?
Stop calling us guys.
Guys,
Guys.
Stop,
please.
Stop it.
Dudes.
For real, my dudes, this episode is paced nicely. The premise is delightful. The prospect of doing anything this season is extremely welcomed, and Nate is just precious.
This coupon entitles you to 1 free Tickle Monster attack.
Yeah, they're Nate coupons, or Napons.
And I've been dreading this arc because in some ways it reflects the existential crisis I've been having over the last year. It exists. Now what? But in reality, the fresh perspective and really paying attention to what the writers and creators were looking to build this season, I have to say it's pretty well done. For example, many of the lingering plotlines are reunited to be explored in this arc. Dwight's still dealing with losing the manager position, and this reflects his hope.
Yes!
Jim and Pam had their second baby, and look, having a kid by itself is a real challenge, but increasing the number of children in a household makes that difficulty ramp up exponentially.
Having a baby is as exhausting as they say it is. Having 2 babies, that's just unfair.
And so based on a couple of glimpses we've seen here and there, things for Jim and Pam haven't really been life hacky-sacking by a lakeside, which admittedly sets up the potential conflict with Kathy really well. It also represents a significant step forward for the Aaron-Andy story, and it didn't go unnoticed that Andy is a competent manager throughout this episode. Overall, I was surprised by how much I enjoyed a special project, and it really does give me an arc to look forward to. I say with all carefulness.
Start looking at my penis.
And it might just be a product of finding an oasis in a desert, but all up, I'm giving Special Project a 4 out of 5.
LOL.
So join me next week when we're in the thick of it in Tallahassee. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.